Welcome back, Vinyl Community. Reggae Spotlight time again. Today paying tribute to the man called Glen Brown, aka the Godson, or the Rhythm Master, two of his nicknames. Nothing impossible. Tune called Forward the Good, Away with the Bad. Glen Brown, appearing on his Pantomine label, later reissue. Dubbed up by King Tubby's on the flip, King Tubby's Dubwise. Glen Brown was born in Jamaica, 1944 circa. Was influenced by the Scatolites around the time of Jamaican independence in the early 60s, particularly the great saxophonist Tommy McCook. As the 60s went on, he began working, doing occasional work behind the counter at a television repair shop called the Wong Brothers. There he linked up with another aspiring young singer named Lloyd Robinson. The two auditioned for Duke Reid's Treasure Isle label, where they were successful and began cutting a series of sides together through the rock-steady days of the mid to late 60s. As Lloyd and Glen, or Glen and Lloyd, they would be credited as. Also, he eventually began working in the hotel circuit in Jamaica. Eventually, he was invited to join the Sonny Bradshaw jazz group, which he accepted. By this time he had learned guitar, bass. He would also become a melodica player, as well as a singer. Multiple threat. Glen Brown. Unfortunately, Lloyd Robertson did not join the Sonny Bradshaw group, which saw the group go their separate ways. But he would link up with various other singers and continue recording for various labels like Cox and Dodd's Studio One, for which he recorded with the Dave Barker, another singer, as Glen and Dave. It's a song called Is It Yes or Is It No? It's a recent reissue from Studio One that came with one of their recent compilations. I think it was a Record Store Day one. By the early 70s, Glen Brown was set to move more heavily into production. He recorded one song with Hopton Lewis, with himself as producer and financed by the Wong Brothers again. The song was eventually released in Britain, but was credited to Prince Buster as producer, unfortunately, which was sort of a unfortunate blow and something of a symptom of the way things would go. Nonetheless, Glen Brown continued on. By 1972, while keeping busy on the hotel circuit and working with jazz groups like Sonny Bradshaw, like the Cecil Lloyd Group, this jazz background would serve him well as he kicked his own productions into high gear, which really kicked off by the year of 1972. Glen Brown began recording a series of productions with other artists, with himself as a vocalist first off, and also with other singers. He would record instrumentals, particularly with Tommy McCook, who he became friends with and formed quite a productive working relationship with. He lived very close to King Tubby, same neighborhood, so he would send his rhythm tracks over to King Tubby's and have him mix 4 or 5 different versions of it. So strong instrumentals, strong dub tracks, and overall strong rhythms Glen Brown was able to produce. So versatile were they that he was able to spin them off into various cuts. You would have multiple singing versions, some instrumental versions, some dub versions, all using the same rhythm track, which could, to maximize investment, could be spun off into various tracks that could then be issued on 7-inch singles, always on a shoestring budget. These records were pressed in very small quantities on labels like the main one being Pantomine. I believe this one's an original. I think I found this locally. Suzanne Prescott, a duet with Glen Brown, Let Me in Your Heart. bit of a shrill-voiced female singer, but Glen Brown comes through, and always a strongly constructed rhythm track from him. And a nice DJ cut by Prince Jazzbo on the flip, doing a variation of the one Scotch, one bourbon lyric from R&B. The early 70s would be Glen Brown's heyday, as he had a number of hits and a number of his productions released. These would be gathered up late 80s, I believe, on the Greensleeves label, with a series of compilations that appeared, with notes by Ian McCann of Echoes magazine. These were reissued in 2015, I believe, through VP Records, should still be available. They appeared as Boat to Progress, which collects various vocal sides on here. Kind of hard to read the typeface, but vocals by Roman Stewart, Glen Brown himself, Keith Poppin, Gregory Isaacs, Johnny Clark, Tinga Stewart, and others, collecting many songs, some of which were hits, some on the same, utilizing the same rhythm track. Check the Winner was a sequel which collected his instrumental sides, chiefly by Tommy McCook and others, Bobby Aitken, Glen Brown himself, excellent instrumentals. And also collecting the DJ sides was Double Attack, with DJs of the caliber of U-Roy, Big Youth, Prince Jazzbo, I-Roy, and lesser known names, Barris Simpson, aka Prince Hammer. Excellent sides. These are my original CD copies I bought probably in the 1990s. These were out of print and fairly hard to find in those days. No Discogs at that time. Appearing on the Shanachie label in the US. There's Check the Winner. Double Attack I was never able to locate. I think probably I found those other two ones on Gem. Anybody remember Gem? Is that still around? Double Attack I only ever had on a CDR I got from somebody. A further compilation would appear in the Roar label in the US, 1995, The Way to Mount Zion, collecting some 1970s sides, with vocalists like Silford Walker, I believe, is on here. But what really put Glen Brown back on the map for a new generation of reggae listeners was Termination Dub, appearing from the great Blood and Fire label, then firing on all cylinders. This appeared in 1996, compiling various dub sides mixed by King Tubby. Wasn't an original album. It was a retroactive compilation of 1970s sides, with hard-hitting dub mixes of Glen Brown's rhythms mixed by the great King Tubby. Came with a great booklet, liner notes by Steve Barrow. There's Glen Brown himself there, some of his labels. And the great King Tubby himself in center. Following, as Blood and Fire began to wind down productions due to various economic pressures, Steve Barrow, founder of Blood and Fire Records, who was quite close with Glen Brown, set up another label, Hot Pot, and issued two compilations called Rhythm Master Volume 1 and Rhythm Master Volume 2, collecting a lot of the same sides that had earlier appeared on those Greensleeves compilations. Again, various vocals, instrumentals, DJ cuts. Around this time, as I got involved in the Blood and Fire community on their through the website and their message board, we started trading a lot of CDRs. Don't have any cover for this one. This is some various Glen Brown productions that appeared on 7-inch, 10-inch, and 12-inch singles. Hard to read the typeface. A lot of the same tracks, again, that appeared on those official compilations. I've also got Dub from the Southeast. In those early days of the internet, I used to make some of my own covers for some of these, so this is a custom job. Dub from the Southeast. Just CDR compilation. We would trade stuff that was unavailable any other way, out of print. Wasn't really collecting vinyl at that point. Also another compilation of a bit later period of Glen Brown productions, Green Bay Killing referencing the famous Green Bay Massacre, also commemorated by Big Youth on record. Custom CD job that I made back in the day. Those 3 compilations would eventually go out of print. Glen Brown would continue on various points. Actually had a surprising return to productivity after a bit of a quiet period later on in the 70s. By the early 80s, he was spending a lot of time in the New York area and moving back and forth between there and the UK. In the late 80s, he began issuing quite a few new LPs. Plays Music from the Southeast, I think, was one of them, and various other albums, also some of them featuring himself on melodica. In 2002, he released a new tune called We Dem a Watch out of Brooklyn, New York, which was the first release on the Black Redemption label, produced by Ras Kush of the Black Redemption sound system, in more of a heavy UK steppers sound. This was a bit of a harder-edged roots sound from Glen Brown, commenting on police harassment and spying on otherwise innocent people. I'm gonna leave you with that one. Glen Brown's legacy is his rhythm tracks that he created. Rhythms like Slaving, which was originally created by Lloyd Parks. Also, one of the more famous ones is called Dirty Harry, originally recorded by saxophonist Richard Hall, whose nickname was Dirty Harry, after the Clint Eastwood character. This also appeared on the Hot Pot label, just a compilation of all one rhythm track with various cuts, including King Tubby's dub mix and vocal and DJ sides, all utilizing that one famous rhythm track, one of his best, Dirty Harry. I'll put a essential Glen Brown playlist in the comments. I'm gonna leave you with that We Dem a Watch single. As I said, Glen Brown, the rhythm master, famous for those very strong, very versatile rhythm tracks, some with strange false starts, spoken interludes in the middle of the song, but always with a sense of humor and definitely a roots sensibility. Great, very versatile at instrumentals, at DJ, at dub. Very much a multifaceted threat. But unfortunately, Glen Brown was never made a lot of money from his music. Fell into ill health in the early 2000s, or around 2010, 2013. Apparently was admitted to a nursing home suffering from diabetes, which eventually cost him one of his legs. Was suffering from a heart condition, dementia, and various health issues. Apparently he was basically destitute. Never, as I said, never made much money from his music. Was apparently ineligible for state medical coverage in New York, and finally passed away October 4th, 2019. But his legacy remains, and he gave far more to music than he ever got back. With that, I leave you. We Dem a Watch, Glen Brown. Peace, Final Community.